Chapter 13. Epicureanism. Epicureanism and how to obtain the good life. Freedom is not achieved by satisfying desire, but by eliminating it. Epictetus. Born in 341 BC, the ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus focused on answering the question, how do you obtain a good life through pleasure by making it fun and happy? Epicurus devoted his life to thinking and arrived at revolutionary, timeless conclusions on what we need to live a happy and pleasurable life. Despite being 2,000 years old, his ideas remain relevant even in contemporary times, particularly due to the abundance of easily accessible luxuries and pleasures. In the consumer world, we have many temptations like lust for sex, money, status, and power. While you can find pleasure in these things, they can also be self-destructive catalysts if you do not keep yourself in check. Epicurus believed that there's a certain point at which wealth decreases your happiness levels instead of increasing them. You may well ask how or why. While money gives you a lot of opportunities, it can also bring a lot of stress if you don't know how to use it wisely and responsibly. In short, if you want to be happier, then live like the poor. If you have money, then live a simple life. If you buy an expensive lifestyle, then the focus of your life will be to pay off debt instead of focusing on living. Money doesn't buy happiness, and the reality is that money buys stress and fleeting pleasures. Epicurus understood the human condition and nature, finding codes of conduct that you will use for the rest of your life. Firstly, we must clarify that Epicurean does not refer to someone who enjoys or is accustomed to luxury and indulgence in sensual pleasures. They have refined tastes or habits, especially in eating and drinking. Instead, it means a disciple or student of the Greek philosopher Epicurus. Epicureanism is a lifestyle. It's like a self-help program. Epicureanism is an ethical philosophy. Ethics is a branch of philosophy that questions and answers how one should conduct oneself in the world by examining morality and value judgments. What is good or bad? Why is something good or bad? These are among the questions it attempts to answer. Epicureanism focuses on answering the following ethical questions. How does one obtain the best good life? How should someone behave to obtain the good life? Epicurus answers by saying that the best good life is obtained through pleasure. However, it is not the overindulging but the elimination of pleasure that helps us obtain the most pleasurable good life. We must clarify that hedonism is not synonymous with Epicureanism. It is the opposite. Hedonism is the ethical philosophy positing that pleasure, understood as the fulfillment of desires, represents the ultimate good and rightful objective of human existence. This is the default philosophy most people subscribe to due to human nature. What hurts is bad, and what doesn't cause pain must be good. At the extreme level, hedonism is the overindulgence in sexual pleasures, food, alcohol, stimulants, and all other bodily pleasures. However, Epicureanism is exactly the opposite philosophy. Epicurus saw that acting as a hedonist leads to pain and suffering because our happiness and pleasure will stem from our external circumstances. We will suffer in the absence of all external goods because we have attached our good life to external factors like sex, food, and luxury. Epicurus agreed that the most intense pleasures are bodily pleasures, but that attaining them is not necessary to acquire the most pleasurable life. He believed it prevents us from acquiring them. Why? Because hedonistic pleasures are of short durations and followed by pain. So, how can you obtain the most pleasurable life if the result is pain? If you take the feelings of being drunk as an example, drinking will make you feel euphoric, but the following day, you will be punished by the hangover for the rest of the day. Epicurus advises us that avoiding pain and refraining from excessive pursuit of pleasures enable us to attain the most pleasurable life, rather than indulging excessively in pleasures. This constitutes the paradox. But it is easier said than done because we have to condition ourselves to go against our survival instincts. This creates self-control. For too many people, it is impossible to control their sex drive and appetite. In short, for Epicurus, the ultimate pleasure is obtained by achieving freedom from pain, confusion, fear, and neurosis. Pleasure as the highest good. In this section, we will discuss how Epicureanism was centered around placing the pursuit of pleasure and avoidance of pain as the highest human good. In its ideal state, ataraxia is a pleasure achieved through tranquility and peacefulness. Aponia is a pleasure acquired with the absence of pain. Epicureans do not care about an indulgent lifestyle. For Epicureans, the highest good was intrinsically valued, which means it was valued for itself and not for some other thing attached to it. As opposed to this, they are instrumental valued things like money because we often pursue money to buy something else, not because we intrinsically value the paper. Before we go any further, we must distinguish the differences in understanding happiness between the philosophers Aristotle and Epicurus. Why? Because both philosophers believed that the highest good is happiness. For Aristotle, the meaning of happiness was the attainment of eudaimonia, which is the flourishing of the individual and living a life of virtue, similar to that of the Stoic philosophers. For Epicurus, happiness was the pursuit of pleasure and avoidance of pain. His justification was that we pursue it because we want to derive pleasure from it. If we put this at a scientific level, it makes sense because we are trying to acquire a dopamine kick out of behaving morally and acting out our virtues. So, to refute Aristotle, we pursue eudaimonia through living a life of virtue because we know it will lead to a pleasurable, peaceful life. We are therefore pursuing the dopamine it will release in our brains after achieving those goals. This means we are genuinely placing pleasure atop the hierarchy of values. We pursue virtue instrumentally because it is the path to the most pleasurable and happiest life. Another Epicurean idea is that the most pleasurable life is attained by avoiding pain and avoiding choices that will impact us negatively. However, this does not mean we must be selfish to achieve pleasure. For example, when a mother jumps in front of a car to save her child, she experiences pain. However, in her assessment, not saving her child would bring her even greater pain. The mother sacrifices her life because, in the pursuit of doing what is right, even if it means her own life is forfeited. She ultimately chooses the most gratifying course of action, saving her child and allowing them to live. Another example involves a nurse working in a hospital with insufficient staff. Working extra hours may lead to burnout and a lack of personal time for self-care. However, faced with the choice between leaving patients without care, risking their lives, and neglecting her own well-being, the nurse opts for altruism. Her sense of duty and the meaningful nature of her job provide her with a dopamine boost, deriving pleasure from fulfilling her responsibilities. The nurse who pursued her career not for monetary gain but for its inherent meaning ultimately finds happiness and a more fulfilling life through pleasure. The conduit for achieving this is her patients, who provide her with a sense of purpose and fulfillment. Altruistic and selfless actions double down on the idea that we seek pleasure to obtain happiness, the highest good. This shows that Epicureanism is not a selfish philosophy as one may assume, that pain and pleasure drive our actions. To summarize thus far, Epicurus believes that happiness is pleasure. It is the highest moral good, and the reason for this is that we pursue it intrinsically for its own sake. There are two divisions of pleasures. Pleasures from the body that only exist in the present, like sex and eating, are of short duration. The second division of pleasures comes from the mind, such as mental states like peace, freedom from neurosis, and pleasant memories. Pleasures of the mind exist in the past, present, and future. Recalling memories can create anxiety and pleasure. Creating a non-existent future can cause stress and pleasure. Future expectations can create a positive or negative experience like fear or excitement. As a result, Epicurus concluded that the pleasures of the mind are more significant than those of the body since they are long-lasting. There are two types of pleasures: kinetic pleasure, which is the joy of having a need fulfilled, and static pleasure, which is the contentment when pain is gone. Static pleasure isn't just the absence of pain, as it can differ even though it doesn't increase. Moving kinetic pleasures are associated with immediate desire satisfaction. Static, katastatic pleasures are associated with contentment, tranquility, and a lack of further desires. To be in a state of static physical pleasure by experiencing an absence of pain is an Epicurean goal called aponia. Ataraxia is the Epicurean goal. Achieving a static state of mental pleasure is a state of tranquility and peacefulness. Anxiety and fear are the greatest threats to an Epicurean. The best way to cure this was through the tetrapharmakos, which we will discuss later in this chapter. In summary, for Epicurus, the two ideal states of happiness are static physical pleasure, aponia, which is a state experiencing the absence of physical pain, and static mental pleasure, ataraxia, which is a state of tranquility or peace. Now, let's delve deeper into the pursuit of the most enjoyable and fulfilling life. Epicurus believed that if we understand our human nature as animals, we can better prepare ourselves to prevent our desires from controlling us. He put all our desires in three categories: natural and necessary desires, natural and unnecessary desires, and unnecessary and unnatural desires. First, we have our natural and necessary desires, pleasures. We share these desires with animals: the lust for water, food, and shelter. These needs are embedded in our nature because it helps us survive. Therefore, these pleasures are not the result of social conditioning. The second type of desires are those which are natural but unnecessary. Food and water you may need to survive. but the sexual desire for sexual gratification you do not need. You need it to propagate your genes. But that is not the argument. The argument is, what does the human desire naturally but does not need for its survival? That's sexual gratification. Even though people may say and act as if they need it to survive, physiology is clear that the only organ system the human body can survive without is the reproductive system. If you do not control your sexual desires, it will lead to a painful life. You lust for bodies you cannot have, which are out of control, and you make your happiness dependent on others. That is not peace but a stressor. Satiate this desire no more than is necessary to avoid pain. This doesn't mean you can't have sex. It means that your happiness and pleasure do not depend on it. Those who choose to overindulge in sexual gratification reach a point where they cannot feel pleasure anymore. So what happens when you can't derive pleasure from pleasure? You begin pursuing more intense feelings like pain. You will seek suffering and painful stimuli voluntarily. The last type of desires are unnatural and unnecessary desires, pleasures, also called vain or empty pleasures. These pleasures are the lowest kind to an Epicurean because they have no inherent limit. No matter how many assets you accumulate, you can always have more wealth. Because these desires lack a limit, we could potentially chase after them forever. This causes a perpetual state that prevents tranquility and contentment. When we fret about the timing or even the possibility of attaining our desires, our peace is disrupted. We sabotage our own tranquility by relentlessly pursuing these pleasures, forgetting that we have the power to abstain from craving them. So, according to Epicurus, when it comes to the pursuit of wealth and other empty desires, he believes that there is no lasting pleasure to be found, because we can never be fully satisfied. Empty pleasures are the result of social conditioning and are characterized as limitless. Examples include the desire for power, fame, and wealth. For example, what number is enough wealth? How much power is enough power? These are subjective questions that corrupt the human soul because it is within our nature to be greedy and continuously seek power to bolster our self-esteem and exert dominance over others, often assuming that people do not know how to wield it for making the right decisions. The more you meet people in power, you will realize that most people want to be leaders out of status. Only a few people who make great leaders don't want to be leaders because they don't want the responsibility and all the negativity that comes with it. Only a very few people can be great leaders because they possess the moral character to lead. Back to unnatural and unnecessary desires. These are the desires that our media, cultures, and society portray as necessary to live a fulfilling or happy life. This is the biggest load of crap you will get from society. Why do numerous wealthy individuals lead miserable lives? And why do many rock stars and celebrities struggle with substance abuse, sometimes even leading to suicide? If they have everything, then why do they suffer? Because they lack meaning and pursue the incorrect things in life. Meaning keeps you alive, not vain pleasures. Would you want to trade your urban life with that of a celebrity who is wealthy but is divorced, fat, and alcoholic, and can't have a private life? I wouldn't. Money can't buy inner peace. Do not chase after vain pleasures because they will make you feel empty and disappointed, especially when you obtain what you think you want because they are without limits and not in your control. Epicurus invited us to satiate pleasures to eliminate pain and throw away unnatural ones. We can understand through discipline that a good life is simple. Once you experience the human condition and expose yourself to a luxurious life, you understand that you're not missing out on much. What is natural for the body and needs is easy to obtain. It is a miracle we have reached as a society. If you want to understand the human condition, go into a national park, into the woods alone for a whole day. Just take food and water, hike more than 15 miles in daylight and darkness, and you'll understand your natural and necessary needs. If you detach yourself from the crowd, separating from those infected with neuroses and experiencing negative outcomes in life, you'll observe that their frustration, madness, and misery doesn't need to be yours. This is because you have regulated and satisfied your pleasures to the point where pain is eliminated. To summarize the strategies for happiness, we must find contentment with our natural and necessary desires. Our natural and unnecessary desires should be minimized and then fulfilled, while our vain and empty desires must be eliminated. We will discuss 3 mistakes we make when considering our pursuit of happiness. These mistakes include believing that we need wealth, romantic relationships, and luxury to be happy. Mistake 1. Money cannot buy meaning. Money will not buy meaning, character, discipline, or personality. No gold watch, car, or clothes can ever look as good as the body of a healthy, disciplined, strong-looking individual. We are conditioned by society to value money more than anything because it is equivalent to freedom. Financial freedom is not the same as peace. Sure, it opens many doors, but it also creates a lot of temptations that many people fall prey to, simply because it is in their human nature. We are conditioned to be obsessed with going to school to get a career that pays well, but many of us are victims of not asking, "Will I love what I do till the day I die?" Many attain education and wealth, yet they find themselves plagued by an emptiness in their souls because they never pursue their passions, instead chasing after money and status. Is it worth self-betrayal? God, no. I would rather live a short life filled with the things I love doing than live a long life filled with the things I hate doing. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with chasing after a high-status career and money. The problem arises when people believe that they need it to be happy. That's not to mention the jealousy, betrayal, frustrated ambitions, and other difficulties that come with status. It might feel like you'd be happier with more money and more things, but what if the answer is that you should live a simple life instead? Simplicity is one of the core lifestyle choices of Epicureans. Now, of course, we need some money. Living paycheck to paycheck creates stress and anxiety. Realistically, to achieve the highest level of happiness, we need to meet our basic needs and have a little extra spending money. To obtain a simple life in our lifetime has become easier than ever. Clothes, food, and water are cheap. Maintaining a healthy and stable lifestyle is easy if you're a responsible adult, if you know how to spend your money. You should not have a problem obtaining the good things in life. What we have achieved as a society is practically a miracle. Epicurus believed that what truly makes the workplace fun depends on your personality. If you're introverted, then you prefer to work alone, but if you're extroverted, it's better to work in small groups with friends because it feels meaningful. Another aspect we long for is finding fulfillment in our labor. To believe we contribute to something more significant to improve our communities and world. You genuinely don't want prestige or money but meaningful work. That will make you happy. I experienced this to be true in all my jobs, even working at a warehouse that I found depressing. However, the humble, down-to-earth, and sweet people gave me the strength and happiness to push through every day for 4 years while working on my bachelor's degree. In addition to working at a physical therapy clinic, the same idea held. I worked with 2 best friends and my brother as a PT aide. Every day felt more like, come and hang out and get paid, rather than come and work to get paid to survive. But my 4th job, the trauma hospital, was the last nail in the coffin that confirmed that Epicurus was correct. Working as a transporter during the COVID wave allowed me to meet many different people and personalities in the medical field. I connected with the radiology and emergency departments, security, ICU, med-surg, and telemetry floors. Medical professionals knew me almost everywhere I went in the hospital. The mentality of going to work was literally, let's go save some lives with friends and get medical experience for the nursing program, and get paid. The meaning was in the work and in suffering together with friends. Mistake 2. A romantic relationship will leave you empty. The media has conditioned us to believe we will marry the one, Prince Charming, or the damsel in distress. We are obsessed with love, but how can we not be if we are only human? However, what Epicurus observed was that love and happiness seldom mix. Happy wife, happy life. There's a reason why that phrase is popular. There's this given that if you make your wife happy by being submissive, which will, in turn, make the man a worm and miserable, then you will have a happy life. Is that so? Why don't you ask the 50% of marriages that ended in divorce? The cold truth is that there is so much bitterness, misunderstanding, miscommunication, jealousy, and cheating in contemporary relationships, especially now with our technology and ease of access to relationships. Epicurus noted that it is uncommon when sex and affection are in harmony. He suggests that we should not place too much faith in our romantic relationships because the actions of our partners are not in our control. If you attempt to control the relationship, it is bound to cause problems that will escalate to the end of the relationship. No rational person wishes to be controlled or told what to do by their partner. Noon wants to be the reflection of what their partner wants them to be. The solution for Epicurus was to not commit to anyone by placing a label on a relationship. Instead, he preferred the friendship stage since it's far more rewarding because that is when we are the sweetest and most polite. But as soon as we place a label in the relationship, people become possessive and jealous. It's as if people think they have a right to mistreat their partner because the label gives them a right to it. What a bunch of hypocrisy. First you give good impressions, then after the label is given, people change by showing their true colors. Epicurus believed the problem was that we did not spend enough time with friends. Distance, chores, and life get in the way of the people who bring true happiness, such as friends. This is the part of Epicurean philosophy I disagree with. At first glance, his beliefs sound like they advocate for a situationship or friends with benefits. I disagree with those two states of romantic relationships because they are self-serving and narcissistic. But what are you also going to do? Not have a romantic relationship or kids? Instead, the better option is to become friends with someone you're genuinely interested in dating for the long term. Marrying your best friend is the best option. If you're breaking up and getting back together repeatedly with the same partner, what makes you believe they're your best friend and that a marriage will work between the both of you? One day, a stranger will walk into your life, swiftly becoming incredibly important, And even though you've only known them briefly, it feels like a love that's lasted a lifetime. Eventually, someone will enter your life who gets everything right, eliminating the waiting game for calls or texts. One day, you won't be the sole giver in the relationship. Instead, you'll find someone eager to support your growth. Trustworthy, loving, and supportive. This person will become your best friend, biggest supporter, and teammate all in one. Meeting someone special makes dreams a reality. Within your loved one, a different type of peace is earned. It is not the peace of a stoic, but more of a spiritual peace that makes you feel genuinely human. I am fully aware that in a forthcoming chapter, I'll delve into the concept that one cannot derive spirituality from another individual, likening it to attempting to extract blood from a stone. The crucial distinction lies in the approach. While projecting an idealized image of a romantic partner onto someone is a common error and done by the majority, forging a meta-personality with a compatible and complementary individual is an entirely different idea. In my view, this is obtaining spirituality with the help of your romantic partner, and you help them. I understand it might seem one is getting blood from a stone after all, and it may appear contradictory to the arguments I'll present in Chapter 15 on what is love. But there are different ideas and different processes. There are two approaches to romantic relationships. The incorrect one involves projecting an ideal onto your partner and losing your identity in them. The correct way is to maintain independence, personality, and identity while your partner does the same, creating a meta-personality through trust, intimacy, loyalty, respect, and truth. Forming a harmonious union of two personalities requires substantial effort and a solid foundation in independence. Both partners should retain their individual identities and avoid losing themselves in each other. This is earned through the hard work of both partners. It doesn't and cannot happen overnight. Most people become less than what they could be, so they settle for a mediocre partner out of desperation and fear of the unknown. These are types of individuals who are obviously cynical about love. Well, no wonder, of course, you're going to be bitter, cynical, and nihilistic because you didn't attract the right partner due to not making the right sacrifices. If you're patient and sacrifice the present for a better future, become something out of yourself, you can be whole. It is a challenging task to make yourself whole, let alone perfect yourself. Mistake 3. Luxury is not peace. It is better to eat bread and water than to feast in times of war. Media plays a significant role in brainwashing us to believe that we need luxury, but it's just an empty pleasure. We think trips to beautiful places, expensive cars, and beautiful houses will make us happy. But what you're genuinely buying is fleeting pleasures and status to calm the anxiety of your insecurities. People clothe and hide everything they don't like about themselves with a cloud of numbers. It diverts others from judging them poorly. Epicurus disagreed with the desire for luxury. He believed we want peace and calm, internally and externally. But calm and peace do not come with luxury. What you get instead of luxury is stress because you need to keep up with payments and hold a job that will let you keep your expensive lifestyle. Internal peace comes from introspection and self-understanding. It comes with understanding what's under your control and letting go of what you cannot control. Getting rid of anxiety and depression takes a lot of work and time. If you do not put those things together, then you're simply not going to achieve internal peace. We need others to listen and understand us, give constructive criticism on our blind spots, and tell us what we are doing correctly. Furthermore, Epicurus gave 3 solutions or tips to live a happy life. Solution number 1. You need your friends. Epicurus practiced everything he preached. He bought a place outside Athens and lived together with his friends. There was plenty of room for everyone to have their rooms, enough quality friends to have conversations and spend time with. It's not about the number of friends, but the quality. What's the point of having 30 so-called friends if none of them will let you crash on their couch if something happens to you? I will go into more depth about friendship in a later chapter. Solution number 2. Work somewhere meaningful, and don't do it for money or status. Don't be afraid to take a pay cut to do something you love. If you can't do your passion for money, find a career you still find meaning in and can tolerate. First, you must ensure you're financially stable before quitting your job. If you are imprisoned by debt, pay it off first. Fulfilling work will keep you alive and keep you in the game. Solution number 3. Find calm in your mind, not in the setting. Epicurus advises us not to chase a place that we think will bring peace. While it is a factor that influences your peace, you have more control over your mind than your environment. If you can have both, then sure, why not pursue it? You can find yourself through introspection, thinking rationally, self-analysis, and self-help, thereby saving yourself and finding peace. Don't attempt to gain spirituality from objects or people. You're setting yourself up for failure. You will find deep insights that cannot be gained through happiness by asking the great questions of existence and the human condition. You need to earn your wisdom. Writing down your feelings is an excellent starting point and should be nurtured as a habit. It allows you to reflect on your emotions, comprehend your current position, acknowledge how your past affects you, and determine the steps needed to overcome it. Moreover, it enables you to contemplate your aspirations for the future. People think they need a big house to be happy, but what's the point of having so much space if you do not know how to live inside it? You must know how to live with yourself before attempting to live with others and deciding to invest in a big house. An empty house with empty rooms is a symbol of the emptiness of the soul. We attempt to fill the void inside our hearts with materialism. Materialism gives us a fleeting high, not long-lasting happiness or meaning. It is one thing to advise you not to chase after the incorrect things, but realistically, you will not understand firsthand until you earn your own money, make the incorrect investment, and realize your regret. Wow, I spent all of this money, which is equivalent to these amount of hours. What a waste of resources. Our capitalist society forces us to believe we need materialism to be happy, but no amount of gold will fill your heart. That's just a fact you will not understand till you experience it. Don't confuse long-lasting happiness and meaning with the short-term pleasure it gives. The Tetrapharmakos. The Tetrapharmakos is Epicurus's 4-part remedy to cure your misery. The term was initially used as compound of 4 drugs: wax, tallow, pitch, and resin. The word has been used metaphorically by Roman-era Epicureans, wiki, to refer to the 4 remedies for healing the soul. The 4 pieces of advice for peace are the following. 1. God is nothing to fear. 2. Don't worry about death. 3. The good things in life are easy to acquire. 4. It's easy to endure terrible things. Epicureans use this as their formula or recipe to cure anxiety and depression. This is used in modern cognitive behavioral therapy. If you practice the Epicureanism you preach, calamity will ensue. Remedy number 1. God is not to be feared. This premise assumes you believe in God, of course. Traditional religions depict their god or gods as a deity that is to be feared for it is loving as much as it is cruel. It gives, but it also takes away. Christianity portrays the Old Testament God as cruel, paradoxical, and vengeful. Epicureanism suggests that we should not fear such deities because natural disasters are part of nature and are not part of our control. There's no sacrifice we can make that will benefit God. Praying to alter the course of events often reflects a deep sense of narcissism within us. We are not unique, and we will not change the mind of God. If you behave virtuously and morally, why would you fear God if you're doing His will? If we add some of the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius's Stoic philosophy, we can understand better. First of all, we do not know or have rational proof if God exists or does not exist. Let's assume that the gods we worship are moral and virtuous. Would a moral deity want to hurt someone by living a philosophical life? No, right? But what if you're not living morally? Well then, maybe you should fear a vengeful God or nature. Furthermore, in Western Christian philosophy, God is commonly characterized by three essential attributes: omniscience, complete knowledge; omnipotence, unlimited power; and omnibenevolence, supreme goodness. Simply put, God is understood to be all-knowing, all-powerful, and perfectly good. However, the following argument against the existence of God remains one of the main reasons you shouldn't fear God. If God wants to prevent evil but can't, He is not omnipotent. He is malevolent if He can prevent evil but doesn't want to. If He is willing and able to prevent evil, why does evil exist? If He is neither willing nor able to prevent evil, why call Him God? Epicurus. We can also apply the philosophy of intelligent design to counter the arguments against the existence of the Judeo-Christian God as the Catholic Church portrays it. The world is full of evil, suffering, cruel, and impractical things that are contrary to life. What type of deity allows the suffering and death of innocent children? What kind of so-called omnibenevolent God permits children to be born with cancer while governments get away with genocide? We are flawed human beings in a flawed world, and a flawed world implies a flawed creator. Remedy number 2. Don't worry about death. The Epicurean perspective of death is similar to that of the atheist and rationalist. Since we do not have any objective proof that God does or doesn't exist, there's nothing to worry about. Science tells us that we cease to feel anything after we die. After you die, there is nothing immaterial soul to torment. Death cannot affect the living or dead. What we truly fear is that which may kill you, not death itself. The idea that our soul goes to heaven or hell is baseless from a scientific perspective. If you believe in either, you still have to take a leap of faith. Some of us fear missing out, but if you don't care about everything you missed out on before you were born, why should you care about what you will miss out on in the future? Instead of suffering from what we can't control, we should feel comfortable and be grateful for the limitations in life. Eternity would be a curse. It is knowing we will die that makes us appreciate the brevity of life. Eternity would be endless suffering. Once you remove the fear of death from your life, you are free to enjoy your lifespan. Realistically, there are worse things than death, such as being an intubated, non-verbal, contracted patient with cerebral palsy in the ICU, fully aware of one's tragic state, while the family hesitates to make the decision to end life support. In my perspective, this is a form of torture, The family may believe that keeping their loved one alive shields them from grief, but in reality, it becomes a selfish act to extend someone's suffering merely to avoid facing the pain of loss. I witnessed this selfishness when my grandfather faced declining health due to colon cancer. Despite his age and inability to recover, my family struggled to grasp the inevitability of his passing, attempting to shield themselves from the grief. The heartache of seeing your own blood is much too painful, but sooner or later you will have to experience it. Time will not heal all of your pain. You just learn to live with the scars. This brings us to the third maximum of the tetrapharmakos. Remedy number 3. The good things in life are easy to acquire. The human body requires food, water, and shelter to survive. In the United States, all your resources can be met easily, even if you're poor, through government help. But people always want more. We simply do not need things that are difficult to obtain, but we confuse need with want. We have shelter and fire to keep us warm and supermarkets with abundant, affordable food to survive. Water is practically free, and there are plenty of good people around to befriend. Our real needs are limited, our wants and empty pleasures are unlimited. When we recognize that we possess not only enough for survival but also to ease much of our suffering, a sense of relief and tranquility naturally follows. Genuine relaxation and happiness become attainable. Our attention can shift beyond mere survival, allowing for a profound aesthetic appreciation of the universe. This entails understanding the nature of things, not just to meet our necessities or dispel fears about the divine and death, but also to marvel at the beauty and sublimity inherent in existence. Others will see you as almost godlike when they see the power of satiating your deepest desires and fully controlling yourself. You need to learn to be a vulnerable, happy human being. You do this by understanding the human condition and existence. You're not immortal. If you chase after empty and limitless pleasures, they will leave you empty and hollow, wanting more intense feelings. You will resort to the extreme of searching for pain voluntarily to make you feel alive. Ultimately, you're a chemical mind. Your body will build tolerance to extreme pleasures, and you will want more and more. While it's wise to learn from the mistakes of others, it's important to acknowledge that many people only change their perspective after making those mistakes themselves. Hollow or empty desires include fame, wealth, glory, and political power. These pursuits are empty because for most of us, they are impossible to attain, causing unhappiness and frustration, as desires know no bounds. How do you know how much power, fame, or wealth is enough? There is no objective knowledge. Since these desires are not connected with your natural needs, no wealth or luxury will satisfy you or allow you to live a peaceful life. A peaceful life comes from realizing and appreciating how little you need your body to survive and live a flourishing, meaningful life. According to Epicurus, there are two types of pleasures, kinetic and katastomatic. Katastomatic pleasure is the joy you feel when you're in a state without pain. It can be physical, like not being thirsty, or mental, like being free from fear. Katastomatic pleasure is the joy you feel when you're in a state without pain. It can be physical, like not being thirsty, or mental, like being free from fear. Katastomatic pleasure refers to the sensation experienced in a state of liberation from needs or desires, in contrast to kinetic pleasure, which manifests during the engagement in a gratifying activity. The absence of pain, aponia, lack of disturbance of mind, and ataraxia are two of the katastomatic pleasures. and are often seen as the focal ones to epicurus, which is that pleasure felt while in a state. This is the pleasure of not being disturbed, of being free from pain. Kinetic pleasure can be understood as a dopamine kick you acquire after achieving something satisfying for the body. You increase your kinetic pleasure, for example, by fulfilling the body's needs such as drinking water when thirsty, eating when hungry, and seeking warmth when cold. In catastematic pleasure, you are free from pain. It is self-sufficient and self-assured. Kinetic and catastematic pleasures are good but naturally limited. There comes a point when we cannot increase our pleasure anymore. For example, when the natural needs of the body are met, you will cease to want pleasure. And overeating beyond a certain point will cause pain and disgust. You can choose between two different types of foods, but at a certain point, it stops being enjoyable because the body's needs are met. Simple foods and water are the most enjoyable when hungry and thirsty. Accustoming oneself to luxuries every day loses their pleasure on us. That is why it is best to see luxuries as rewards after achieving and overcoming something difficult. Something becomes far more meaningful when it is scarce, not when we have access to it daily. If we no longer have access to luxuries after getting used to them, we will suffer more for their absence. Frequently, the relinquishment of immediate pleasures is requisite for the attainment of more substantial gratification in the future. Similarly, subjecting oneself to certain discomforts can be imperative to avert more severe anguish later on. True serenity often eludes comprehension until one has experienced genuine adversity and discomfort. Remedy number 4. The terrible things in life are easy to endure. That brings us to the fourth and final maximum of the tetrapharmakos. The terrible things in life are easy to endure. People are tough. We can endure much tragedy if equipped with the correct tools of philosophy. Sudden pain can be intense but doesn't last long. Chronic pain, although long-lasting, is dull. However, if the pain ever becomes too intense for too long, there's always the option of ending life, at which point no harm can come to us whatsoever. The ideas of Epicurus teach us simple ideas to withstand tragedy, endure pain, and accept reality for what it is, not for what we wish it to be. Nature limits us. Our humanity is beautiful because it is brief. Our mortality makes us appreciate what we have and understand the human condition. You can achieve a more pleasurable life if done correctly through Epicureanism. It is not just about memorizing philosophy, but about acting it out. You can only say philosophy works by practicing it. All chips need to be in, not one foot in and the other out. The reward of tranquility takes practice, dedication, and sacrifice. Living simply in America is easy. Being poor or behaving like you're poor makes us happier, because when we are people of a few pleasures, it is easy to satisfy a few pleasures as opposed to many. If they break or become lost, a few cheap things will not stress you out. This is the price of peace. Let's use the example of the guy who drives an expensive car versus the guy who drives an old rust bucket. In all probability, the guy who drives the luxurious car is financing the car because he cannot afford to pay for the whole car in cash. He also parks his car far in a parking spot where no one will scratch it out of fear. But the person who drives the rust bucket has a profound peace from not fearing what happens to his car because another scratch means nothing to his car. However, this does not mean you should not own beautiful, expensive things in your life if you want to earn them. The problem arises when the object we own ends up owning us by taking our peace away. We invite stress and anxiety and make ourselves more vulnerable by owning expensive items with which we identify. We use status, numbers, and luxuries to define ourselves and to mask our insecurities. So when we lose these objects of value and identity, we also lose self-esteem and feelings of self-worth because we are attached to the wrong things. You do not care about losing or breaking an object when it is expandable. The more you have, the more want. Materialism becomes an addiction because we quickly grow used to the finer things. It is also inherent in our nature to desire what we do not possess, to be drawn to scarcity. This inclination makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint, as seeking scarce resources like food enhances the chances of survival. But wanting what you can't have is stressful. Desire leads to suffering. When you ask people what objects would make them achieve the good life, most will answer, a career, a big house, a luxurious car. However, if you ask them the same question after fulfilling their fantasies, they will answer with bigger luxuries. Well, now I want a bigger house, a boat, etc. This is the endless cycle most people get stuck in, because it is in our human nature to seek and want more. However, just because it is part of our nature does not mean we cannot control it. You can control it. It is about realizing the problem and acting. Epicurus believed in showing gratitude and loving what you already have, eliminating your pleasures to gain more when luxuries come into your life. It is liberating only to want what you already have. Comparing ourselves to others and competing with status is rooted in jealousy and envy. This causes stress and anxiety, not peace. The less you have, the less money you require to maintain your lifestyle, and the more peace you earn. If you do the opposite, you will work an endless job to pay for shit you do not need. The less you work, the more time you have to do things you genuinely love that make life meaningful. Just because you practice Epicureanism doesn't mean you should not chase after a high-paying career that you love. It is more about living within your means and not chasing after desires that will disturb your peace. Epicureanism is about not imprisoning yourself with desires and pleasures. You may live in a small apartment, have a few inexpensive possessions, and even some fine possessions. However, ultimately, you do not fear loss because your happiness is not attached to material things. Your happiness comes from within, from having your needs met. According to Epicurus, a simple life is the best way to live. If you genuinely love your job because you find meaning in it, then this advice may not apply to you. If your work brings you happiness and not too much stress or anxiety, then of course you don't need to cut your hours if you don't want to. Meaningful work is one of the top factors in our happiness today. Money is only an instrument or fuel to keep you alive. It buys resources to keep your life running, but you should not chase after the luxuries it can buy. Instead, focus on the things you're passionate about. They will bring peace money cannot buy. You may read this and say, yes, all of this is true. I agree with you, William, but what will you do with this knowledge? Accepting that something is true is not enough. It is the first step to making a change, however. You do not only need to agree with the wisdom, but also practice it yourself to know it is true. Learn to keep things simple. It is better to learn to take pleasure in the small pleasures than to keep chasing pleasure forever. The desired result is serenity. Live in profound gratitude towards life that provides pleasure and joy. We only learn to cherish a moment when it has become a memory. Only when we live in the present can we notice our treasures and realize that real pleasures are the simple things. I want to close this chapter by addressing one major flaw in the Epicurean philosophy. Epicureanism can fall apart when it advocates for the avoidance and elimination of pain. This idea is flawed. While I agree that unnecessary pain, such as overindulgence in pleasures like drugs, alcohol, food, and sex, should be avoided and eliminated, we should not strive to eliminate pain and discomfort altogether. The type of pain or stress I refer to is eustress, which is positive stress. If you eliminate pain, you also eliminate your threshold or foundation for enduring suffering. Suffering shapes your character and personality. Pain molds and completes you. In this regard, Epicureanism stands in stark contrast to Nietzsche's idea of the Bermensch. Nietzsche believed that through suffering we forge our identities. If pain is eradicated, the opportunity for self-creation is lost. Suffering must be addressed, purpose found within it, and something beautiful made from it. We must actively engage with suffering, not passively endure it. This is where Epicureanism has the potential to fall apart. By addressing this weakness while embracing the rest of the philosophy, one can achieve better results.